Okay, so this is so super easy. I have already painted this tile because they were already done before I got the message about doing these. Anyhow, all I did was I took this brush, it's just a cheap, crappy 1-inch Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever brush, and I painted these areas in here with it so that it was easier to get in the grooves. And then I went back with the sponge brush and I just kind of brushed over these spots to pick some of that paint back up. So you can see like there's more white showing through here, and it kind of takes on a silvery look. So really I could leave this tile just the way that it is and be perfectly happy with it, but I decided I wanted mine blue. So I have my sponge brush, again, just cheap and crappy, which usually I don't ever use these, but they work really great for this. I just have leftover paint I found in my parents' basement because my dad used to be a painter. Any kind of wall paint I think is fine that you would use to paint your house. I have heard no spray paint. I believe Michael said no spray paint. And just a roll of cheap paper towels. The cheaper the better, because the coarseness of them is actually better for kind of distressing than the better brands like Brawny. So from there, I just take this and I get a little bit, not a lot of paint on my brush, and I just kind of let it pick up whatever it's going to pick up throughout these areas. I do go in and make these smooth areas down here a little bit more blue, so it takes on the blue as the color, or as the main color, and down the sides here too. Excuse my 2-year-old in the background yelling for daddy. Now, take my paper towel and just kind of ball it up and flatten out a little piece here, and then just kind of rub it so that it blends in a little bit more and it's not quite so blue. Hopefully you can see this. I don't like any real bright blues to be shown in. I like it all to be pretty well blended, but that's just my personal taste. A spot here or there is not so big of a deal, but I'll let it go a little bit into the recessed areas in here, but I like to keep it kind of on top mostly. So it's really just that simple. I'll just repeat it on all of these sides. Now when I do the middle part, I do kind of leftover paint towards the end, because these sponge brushes, they will absorb a whole lot of paint and they'll hold on to them unless you squeeze them out. So I kind of let that build up in the brush, and then I'll use that to go back and do this middle part where it's textured, because that's a little bit more difficult to do without making it look super blue or super gold. So it's just kind of one of the tricks I've learned about the sponge brushes throughout this. Now the side parts where it's smooth, same thing. I don't want too much paint, so I just kind of do those as I go before a whole lot of paint gets stuck in this brush. And you have to do it in sections, otherwise the paint dries. The styrofoam sucks it up really fast. So make sure that you're kind of doing it as you go, otherwise you may not get the look that you want. So again, there's too much paint in there, so I'm going to take some of that back out. And really this area is a little more than I want it to be, so I may go back and hit it with some gold before I'm done. A little bit of paint. I mean, there's not much, hardly at all, on the tip of the brush there. cases, I want to rub almost all of it back off because I want it to look rose gold in the corners here where they meet. Because once you put them up, these take on their own little pattern when you put the tiles next to each other. So that's one thing you might want to kind of be aware of as you're doing these corner side pieces, to make sure you do them kind of similar so that when you put them up they don't look funny next to each other. But really, I mean, with the distressing technique, you can't go wrong too much there because that's what it's supposed to look like. Now this area in here, I don't know if you can see it, I'm going to leave that alone because I like the kind of wispiness that it's done. Okay, so now I've got a little bit of paint in my brush, and what I'm going to do is just real gently rub it sideways so that it kind of just picks up a little bit in here. And if I go too much, it's not so big of a deal. So that's a pretty dark streak there. It's not really what I'm looking for, but that's easily enough fixed. This area I'm not liking so much. There's a little bit too much blue in there for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of gold off the top of the paint can. In fact, that's probably way too much. I'm going to kind of just rub it back in. And one thing I like is to kind of rub out these corner sides here that make the shape in the middle. And just a little bit because you don't want it to be too much. Probably too much there. That way you kind of get the shape. I'm going to rub all of this back in because there was too much blue there that I didn't like. And it dries really fast and your paper towels start kind of falling apart. Alright, I'll just add a little bit more. Let's see, there's one other spot. There's too much blue. Here. So right here, I didn't like all of the blue in the middle there, so I'm going to add just a little bit of gold back in there. You can go back in and you can, make these areas as predominant as you want, or as low key as you want. But it's really, it's that simple, and that took, what, maybe 5 minutes? So that's it, it's done. Combine that with the original paint time of the tile, and I think you're looking at maybe a 10 or 15 minute project.